He stepped into the ring as if nothing had happened, but behind his steady gaze, his body was broken. Muhammad Ali fought battles the world never knew about, and now you'll find out. Muhammad Ali was always seen as an invincible giant, a man who not only boxed but also danced in the ring, transforming every blow into poetry, every dodge into a spectacle. The public saw an immortal warrior, a symbol of confidence and power, someone capable of challenging kings, presidents, and rivals without ever losing the sparkle in his eyes. But there was something Ali was hiding, something that only those closest to him could perceive in small gestures, in discreet silences between fights. His body didn't always match the image of strength everyone applauded. Behind the icon was a man who felt pain, pain that burned muscles, locked joints, and robbed him of sleep. But Ali never let the world know, because for him, admitting weakness was like giving ammunition to the enemy, like losing before the first round. So he entered the ring injured, bruised, with bruises hidden under bandages, and secrets hidden in his chest. And yet, he fought as if he were whole. These moments, never revealed in public, were the silent chapters of his career. Each time the bell rang, Ali waged two wars, the visible one against the opponent before him, and the invisible one against the pain that threatened his endurance. The world only saw the spectacle, but now, we'll pull back the curtain. We'll show how he faced the impossible, never allowing his pain to become headline news. And perhaps, by the end of this story, you'll understand that Muhammad Ali's greatest fight was never against an opponent, but against his own body. It was 1967. The entire world saw Muhammad Ali as an invincible colossus. He dominated not only the ring, but also the media spotlight, the crowds in the streets, and global politics itself. When he entered the arena, he seemed to carry an aura of immortality. But that night, before another fight, something was different. Ali walked to the locker room with measured steps, avoiding showing the stiffness he felt in his knee. The pain had been lingering for weeks, the result of intense training and repetitive movements that were taking their toll. Still, no one could suspect. He smiled, chatted, joked with friends, and repeated his mantra, "I am the greatest." But deep down, he knew he was about to face not only his rival but also his own physical limitations. In the locker room, as the trainers adjusted his bandages, Ali closed his eyes for a moment. The sound of the crowd vibrated outside, like a continuous thunderclap shaking the walls. It was as if millions of people were there, waiting for him to confirm, once again, the legend he had become. The doctor asked quietly, "Everything okay, champ?" He responded with a simple, firm, curt yes. But the truth was, his body was screaming. Every movement in the warm-up reminded him that his leg wasn't in sync with his mind. His heart raced, not only from the adrenaline of the fight, but from the fear that if a blow was mistimed, the world would see the weakness he was hiding. When the bell rang, Ali advanced as he always did, light, confident, with that footwork that seemed to defy the laws of gravity. The crowd went wild, believing they were seeing the same old Ali, but the more observant I could notice something subtle. His speed was slightly slower, his steps shorter, as if an invisible weight were holding him back. His opponent tried to exploit this, throwing low, quick blows, trying to corner him. Ali reacted skillfully, but inside, each dodge was a shock that pierced his aching knee like a knife. He took a deep breath and hid it, because giving up was never an option. Between rounds, sitting on the bench, Ali listened to his trainer's instructions, but his mind was elsewhere. "I can't show anything. I can't show pain. If they find out, I'm finished." Sweat poured down his face, not just from the effort, but from the psychological toll of keeping a secret in the middle of a battlefield. It was like operating on two fronts. On one side, maintaining his invincible persona before the world. On the other, waging an intimate battle against the pain that threatened to dismantle his own mask. As the rounds progressed, the tension grew. The crowd cheered with each well-placed blow. But no one there knew that Ali's greatest enemy that night wasn't wearing gloves and wasn't even on the other side of the ring. He was a silent enemy, hidden beneath his skin, testing his endurance every second. And when the final round ended, victory was his, as always. Deafening applause echoed through the stadium as Ali raised his arms to the sky. The crowd saw only the hero, but he knew this victory wasn't just against his opponent, it was against himself. And it was in this silence, between pain and glory, that Ali discovered a cruel truth. His body was already beginning to take its toll on his legendary status, a truth that could never be revealed. The greatest is not the one who never feels pain, it is the one who fights even when the pain forces him to stop. The arena was packed, but for Ali, the real ring began before the bell. His body bore scars no one could see. His right shoulder seized up in training, the result of mistimed blows and endless sparring sessions. While his teammates laughed and warmed up, he felt a twinge every time he raised his arm. In the silence of the locker room, he closed his eyes and repeated in his mind, "Pain is not a warning. It is merely an echo." The crowd outside clamored for the spectacle, unaware that the hero they so idolized entered the ring carrying hidden wounds. Each time he adjusted the bandage, it was as if he were donning armor made of disguises. His confident face gave no indication that, inside his body screamed in agony. That night's opponent was aggressive, young, and hungry for glory. He had the eyes of a predator ready to pounce on any opening. And Ollie knew an opening already existed his shoulder. When the bell rang, he danced in, light as ever, but his movement no longer had the same fluidity. Each jab required more effort, each dodge a meticulous calculation to avoid revealing a weakness. The crowd cheered, convinced they were witnessing another show by the greatest of all time. But behind the choreography, pain was etched in every punch. With each contact, his arm seemed to burn like a red-hot iron, but he didn't let his face betray anything. Ollie wasn't just fighting the rival in front of him, he was fighting the betrayal of his own body. During breaks, sitting on the bench, sweat dripped heavily, and the coach piped instructions in his ear. More jabs, pressure, keep your distance. He nodded, but inside he was thinking something else. If I miss, my shoulder will give me away, and if my shoulder gives me away, it's all over. The pressure was immense, not only from his opponent, but from the crowd, the media, and the very reputation he had built. Here was the man who never showed weakness, the giant who defied the impossible, and so, revealing pain was not permitted. With each round, his strategy was molded to the limit. Fewer long strikes, more short speed, cleverly hiding his flaws. He transformed pain into disguise, and disguise into spectacle. The fight was brutal. Ollie sensed something wasn't right and tried to corner him, exploiting his right flank. But Ollie reacted intelligently, switching positions, using his good leg, and exploiting the other's fatigue. It was a silent war, where each blow concealed an internal battle. When the fight ended and his arm was raised, the stadium erupted in cheers. The crowd saw only victory, but no one imagined that behind the smile lay a broken body. Ollie stepped out of the ring, as always, lifted by the myth he had created. But deep down, he knew, pain was becoming a constant shadow, and this shadow would follow him until the end of his career. The crowd applauds the glory, but the glory only exists because the pain was never revealed. Before continuing, if this story already gave you chills, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and comment on what you feel after discovering this hidden side of Muhammad Ali. This helps us continue to bring you stories the world has tried to hide. And, to help us continue creating videos, buy our ebook in the first link in the description. Besides motivating us, this helps us improve the quality of our content. With each new fight, Muhammad Ali carried the weight of a self-made myth. He was the man who danced in the ring, who spoke with unshakable confidence, and who made the impossible seem effortless. But there was a truth few knew: the human body has limits, and Ollie was already feeling those limits long before the world realized it. It wasn't just pain in a knee or shoulder, it was a deep, silent wear and tear that ran through him like an invisible current. His body, pushed to its limits by relentless training and brutal fights, accumulated scars that would never be shown in public. Ollie smiled, provoked, marketed himself as invincible. But there were nights when he simply couldn't get out of bed. In one of these fights, exhaustion became his most cruel adversary. The heat in the arena was suffocating, and each round seemed to drag on for an eternity. His lungs burned, his breath labored, his heart pounded like an out-of-time drum. From the outside, the audience saw only the image of the giant, but inside, he felt himself falling apart. His rival was young, explosive, thirsty for glory, and Ollie knew his endurance was being relentlessly tested. Every blow he took seemed to multiply his own body weight, and every dodge cost him energy he no longer had. Still, he refused to give in. If he stopped for even a second, if he showed weakness, the legend would begin to crumble before millions of eyes. Between rounds, he would sit on the bench as if his body were begging for rest. His trainer shouted instructions and waved towels, but Ali maintained a firm expression. Sweat poured down his face, his muscles trembled subtly, and only he knew the extent of the battle raging within him. In his mind, there was a war of voices. One said, "End it, no one will blame you." Another responded, "You're not just a man, you're a symbol. If you fall, the world falls with you." The second voice always won, because Ali wasn't just a boxer, he was a myth in the flesh. Condemned to uphold his own legend, The fight progressed, and the crowd cheered with each round, oblivious to the suffering hidden behind the champion's eyes. He used every ounce of strategic intelligence to buy time, to breathe with subtle movements, to transform the last of his energy into accurate blows. It was no longer the spectacle of the dancing Ollie, but the survival instinct of a man who knew he needed to deceive everyone, including his own body. Exhaustion consumed him, but he rose with each round as if made of steel. When the final bell rang, the stadium erupted in applause, and Ollie, staggering, raised his arms as if he had won the most important fight of his life. No one knew it, but that victory was achieved against an enemy no spectator could see. Absolute exhaustion, the exhaustion that nearly made him collapse in front of the world. Ollie left the ring with a victorious smile, but as he walked through the tunnel, he let out a deep sigh, as if in that moment his body was saying, "Today, you narrowly won." It is not the perfect body that wins battles, but the soul that refuses to fall even when it is already defeated. Time passed, and each fight seemed to add a new, invisible scar to Muhammad Ali's body. It wasn't just his bones that complained, nor his muscles that burned. There was a different, deeper weight, one that came from his mind. He was already carrying not only the public's expectations, but also the political pressure, the battles outside the ring, the constant pressure to be more than just an ordinary man. And at that particular moment in his career, one fight in particular would be marked not only by the physical pain, but by the emotional burden he concealed. It was a warm night, and the gym was filled with voices that mingled into a continuous roar. Ollie walked through the entrance tunnel with a serene expression, his body illuminated by the lights. But inside, exhaustion and pain were compounded by a silent anguish, the fear of not living up to the myth he had created. The crowd chanted his name, but he felt as if those voices were chains binding him to a character he could no longer abandon. His leg throbbed, the blows from training still echoed in his ribs, and his breath seemed shallow since the warm-up. But he couldn't stop. There was no room for doubt, no room for fragility. When the bell rang, Ali danced. Or at least, he tried to dance. The movements that once flowed like music now seemed stiff, heavy, as if each step required superhuman effort. His opponent, alert, noticed the difference. He advanced violently, throwing his body forward in search of a slip. Ali dodged, but it was no longer the same choreography that enchanted crowds. It was a battle of survival. With each punch, pain vibrated in waves, but his face remained impassive. The audience saw confidence, but inside him there was only resistance. During halftime, sitting on the bench, the coach shouted instructions. "Get your guard up, press harder, you need to dominate him." Ollie simply shook his head, while an inner voice murmured, "What if I can't? What if today is the day everyone discovers I'm only human?" He closed his eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and returned to the ring as if nothing had happened. This was his true struggle, to maintain the illusion intact, even when his body cried out for mercy. The following rounds were brutal. His opponent pressured him, exploiting every opening, trying to wrest from him not only the title but also the image of invincibility. Ollie retreated, defended, and responded with surgical strikes that hid his wariness. Each dodge was meticulously calculated, not by force, but by intelligence. He was no longer the same speedy young man, but he compensated with strategy, patience, and the coolness of someone who knew that the mind could prevail when the body failed. As the final round approached, the entire stadium seemed to breathe with him. There was no energy left, but there was something greater than the pain, pride. He knew that even if he fell, he had to fall like a warrior, not like a common man. The final bell sounded, and he remained standing, bleeding, exhausted, but raising his arms to the sky as if to say, "I'm still here." Victory was declared in his favor, and the crowd erupted in applause, unaware that, at that moment, the greatest of all time was fighting back invisible tears. As he left, his steps slow and his body weighing tons, Ollie muttered to himself, "Pain is the price of legend, and I will pay it in silence." It was the end of an era. Muhammad Ali's body no longer responded as it once had. Every training session became a battlefield. Every sparring session a cruel reminder that time and injuries were taking the toll he'd tried so hard to hide. He still smiled in front of the cameras, still taunted his rivals with sharp words, but behind the glare of the spotlight was a tired man, a warrior bleeding inside. Ali no longer fought just opponents. He fought against the deterioration of his own body. His knees creaked like rusty gears, his hands burned with constant pain, and his shallow breathing betrayed a stamina that was no longer the same. But stubbornly, he refused to stop. That night, the gym was packed. The crowd roared, eager for another spectacle. Ali walked slowly to the ring, his eyes fixed on the ground, as if carrying the weight of a lifetime of battles. He knew this fight would be different. He no longer had the explosiveness of before. He could no longer rely solely on his body. He needed to use his mind, his cunning, and above all, the courage to remain standing even when everything inside him begged him to give up. His opponent was younger, faster, stronger. The fight was unequal from the start. But what Ali carried was something no rival could duplicate. The soul of someone who never allowed himself to falter in the face of the world. When the bell rang, the ring transformed into a stage of pain and glory. The first blows were devastating, each blow seeming to pierce his body like blades. The crowd saw resistance, but they didn't know that with each impact he needed to summon almost superhuman strength to remain standing. Sweat mixed with blood ran down his face, while his heart beat like an uncontrolled drum. There were moments when his legs trembled so badly it seemed impossible to support his own weight, but Ali didn't back down. He knew that, even if he wasn't fully fit, he needed to show the world that the legend still resisted. In the corner of the ring. Between rounds his trainers watched him with concern. "Do you want to stop, champ?" one of them asked in a low, almost pleading tone. Ali looked up, took a deep breath, and replied, "No, as long as I can stand up, I'll fight." It wasn't just pride. It was the conviction that his entire life had been built on the idea that giving up was unacceptable. The crowd wouldn't accept a surrendered Ali, he himself wouldn't. So he returned to the center of the ring as if on his last march. The final rounds were brutal. His opponent punished him, his body yielded, but his mind stood like a wall. With every passing second, Ali seemed to say with his eyes, "You can break me, but you won't break me." When the final bell rang, there was no explosion of energy, no dancing, just inner silence. He had survived. The audience gave a standing ovation, unaware that this wasn't just another fight, it was his final victory over himself. He left the ring staggering, but with his head held high. As always, Ali knew he would never reveal the truth. He would never tell the world how many times he fought while injured, how many times he hid bruises, how many nights he cried alone in pain. This was the secret he would carry with him, because he believed the legend needed to remain intact. For him, pain was part of the pact with immortality. The body may fail, but the soul never surrenders. And that is what makes a man eternal. Muhammad Ali wasn't just the greatest in the ring. He was the greatest because he fought battles the world never knew existed. Every time the audience saw him dance, behind it lay hidden pain, bruised bones, agonized muscles. Every time he raised his arms in victory, there were sleepless nights, lonely tears, and silences that carried more weight than any belt. The glory the world saw was just the tip of an iceberg of sacrifices he never exposed, because for Ali, weakness could not be shown. He believed that if his pain were revealed, the legend would shatter. So he chose silence, chose to fight in silence, choosing personal sacrifice to keep alive the flame that inspired millions. And perhaps that's where true greatness lies, not just in the accurate strikes, nor in the historic victories, but in the courage to silently endure what would have brought down any other man. Ali left us a lesson that resonates far beyond boxing. We all face invisible battles. We all carry pain the world doesn't see, but the difference lies in how we respond to it. He showed us that the soul can be stronger than the body, that hope can be heavier than pain, and that true victory isn't lifting the belt. It's not giving up when everything inside us tells us to stop. So when we remember Ali, it's not just the champion who won titles, it's the man who faced the cruelest enemy, his own body, and still refused to give up. He taught us that pain can be hidden, but courage always shines through, and that even when the body fails, the soul of a true warrior remains standing, untouchable, eternal. Ali never revealed his pain, because his greatest victory was to transform suffering into silence, and silence into legend.